Michelle Tuzman, welcome to RevAmp. We're glad to have you here today, and we look forward to learning much more about you and your experiences as a sales operations leader. For those who don't already have the pleasure of knowing you, please just tell us a little bit about your role, who you work for, and perhaps a little bit about your company.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. So Michelle Tuzman, I work for Electric as the sales operations manager. My job is to enable and optimize the role of the SDRs and AEs in getting Electric new business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what does Electric do for those of us that don't know?
Yeah, Electric is a New York City-based startup, and we're modernizing IT support. We're doing things differently, more automated, more personalized, faster support at a fraction of the cost. So we're doing cool stuff.
Very good. And when we were doing our previous prep session, you shared with me the fact that you've gone through a transition in your sales operation process, and approximately a year ago, give or take, you made the move to what you could call a spray and pray type acquisition strategy over to something that's much more account based and targeted. Let's just start off by helping us to understand why you made that transition. What was the catalyst for change?
Yep. So when I started at that point in time, what was happening was we were emailing, calling bursts of maybe 100 accounts at a time, for example. And what we experienced was by that point, we've had enough conversations to start being able to sift through what kind of conversations are the ones we want to be having versus what are the kind of conversations that maybe we can sift away and that are not necessarily like qualified opportunities for us.
Mm-hmm.
So with that kind of understanding of what essentially is much closer to an ideal customer profile,
mm-hmm.
we can now understand, or at that point we understood, okay, let's get more specific. Let's try to have more of those conversations we want to have and less of those conversations that we don't want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And with the kind of conversations we want to have, let's be more intentful with who we reach out to and how we outreach them. Instead of just calling and blasting them for emails and calls for 3 days, let's have a more thoughtful 3-week approach
mm-hmm.
where partly automated but partly customized, making sure that we're thoughtful with how we want to interact with our prospects and hopefully convert them into partners to Electric.
So that was a bit of the strategic overview. What were the fundamental building blocks to start that project back then? Like, where did you start? Did you start with KPIs? Did you start with aligning the right technologies? Did you start with defining the right target list? What was the starting point for you?
What we started with was redefining the process.
Okay.
We will right now is more of the time, now that we've had that that in place for a year, where now we want to invest in technology, and we have ideas of what partners we want to work with to help us get to the next level with technology. But
mm-hmm.
getting to this point was much more around redesigning a process that does look at what is our ideal customer profile, who do we want to be talking to. Mm-hmm. So things like employee size, under a certain threshold, companies don't really need Electric as much as would be a nice to have.
Right.
But then there's a threshold that, or around 20 employees, where it's too time consuming for the CIO or CTO or IT leader or whoever is most capable at the time to be supporting the IT infrastructure of their company on top of their actual job. Mm-hmm. And that it starts to make more sense to have a conversation with us. So everything from who we talk to, we start to get more intentional on. Are there industries that we don't want to be talking to because it doesn't make sense for them? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first piece on who we target. And then how does the actual machine work? So at one point we were just pumping accounts to our reps' names. Mm-hmm. And then we heard feedback from them that they have a good sense of what a good prospect might look like, that they would like more, they would like to be enabled more to be part of the account selection process. So then we iterated to a queue where and the queue itself is also an iterative process, but we started with here, for 2 weeks, here is a queue of 200 accounts. And over the next 2 weeks, you filter through the queue and you find what you think are the best accounts. Then we expanded it to a quarterly queue that would enable them to have more accounts over time to choose from. And we got we designed the outreach sequence to be not a 3-day sprint, but a longer one with mixed types of touch points.
Okay. And how long was it until you started to see or feel the difference in the impact of the results? Was it something that was overnight in week 1, week 2? I'm guessing not. Was it within the same quarter? What was the sense of impact?
So larger sense of impact definitely took time, but the beauty of the new sequence, we actually did start to see the results on week 2 and week 3, because the week 2 and the week 3 opportunities that were converted wouldn't have otherwise converted in a 3-day sequence. So actually right away, you could see like, oh wow, if I work an account a little longer, I'll actually be more likely to convert it. And that's a conversion rate that, that we track. How did the conversion rate or during spray and pray look like differently than, more strategic? So yeah, the ROI kind of came immediately on weeks 2 and 3, and then over time you can see the aggregate increase on conversion rate off of larger batches of accounts, not just the first batch that we changed over, but over time you see how conversion rate will go up when you nurture the prospect a little more, get them a little more, acquainted with who you are, why you're reaching out, why should I even respond? And then, it takes people different time to respond. I'm actually pretty quick when people reach out to me, and if I think there's value, I'll respond right away. Right. But other people might need to sit and think, be like, okay, well, they sent me this link, this article, maybe I should talk to them. And that can take 2-3 weeks. It can take 2 months. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working on as working towards our goal state, is now even increasing from a 3-week cadence to nearly a 2-month cadence. So again, that we can increase our conversion rate.
So did the metrics change then over this project? How did they change?
Yeah, I mean, everything from conversion rate, which is, activity to opportunity, to we follow a framework measuring our pipeline, which is, the beginning of an opportunity towards qualified pipeline. So we track the metric of the movement of any opportunity and how much of, 100 opportunities, what percentage of those opportunities will move to qualified pipeline. So we measure that move metric, and then we measure the win metric on the qualified set, subset of opportunities. So all of those metrics increase the more strategic and targeted you get.
So I'm guessing probably productivity of the team was a byproduct of this too, that now people were able to focus more on the quality rather than the noise. Did you just use the same technology that you already have in place the same way? Did you change the way that you used it? Was there an evolution? Did you have to add new pieces of technology to the stack to connect the journey or the flow? What were the decisions that you had to make when it came to the technology that you use?
Absolutely. So investing in outreach was the first big tech investment that we had to do to accomplish these goals. Without a sophisticated tool like that, you can't customize and set up all these triggers and automations without a tool that can help you do that. It's also so it's very interesting actually. Before outreach, I would maintain a calendar of trailing activities that need to happen on any given day based on the day of a sequence. And mind you, an AESDR is handling 3 batches at a time. So it's a 3-week cadence. So at any given moment, you're working 3 batches of sequences. So I would maintain a calendar, and every single day I would ping the AESDR Slack channels, be like, hey guys, today is day 10, call these accounts, email these accounts. It was not scalable whatsoever. So outreach completely removed that need, obviously, right? Outreach tells you, call this, email this, do this, everything. You don't lose any activities, you don't lose any follow-ups.
Right.
It just tells you what you need to do versus some Slack from sales ops.
Yep, yep. So outreach, that was it. That was the whole change, or is there anything else that you did in terms of tech?
So in terms of investing in tech in the past year, to facilitate outreach, it would, that would be the main one. We recently got Gong, which is going to really help with understanding the types of conversations we're having,
Right.
and how we can improve our messaging, how we can improve our coaching. So that's a big one. And then things that we're looking into now, which I think will also will be part of what's required to get to the next level for us, are like intent signals and intent and signal. So in terms of where we've been, we invested in Gong and outreach, and going forward, I think the tools that are going to really make a big difference for us are intent and signal tools. So something we're evaluating right now, we were evaluating Bambora and G2 Crowd as ways to understand how can we get even more strategic on account selection. Currently, our reps will go into their queue, they will look at primary industry, they will look at last activity date, they will look at employee size segment. These are great from a graphics to filter through. But what do you do when you have 1,000 accounts that are okay, you filter down to your 1,000 accounts that all else equal are good accounts? How do you know which 5, 10 to target? And we need technology to help answer that question. We need intent technology to say this company is a likely buyer or is likely interested in something you have to offer because they're searching these topics. You have a problem, or the prospect has a problem that they're looking to understand, educate themselves better on, or actually actively evaluating a vendor. Those are the people we want to be talking to because we can help them.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm definitely familiar with that. So rounding up now, in terms of, we covered tech stack, we've covered metrics. In terms of success, what have been the takeaway successes that you guys have experienced and received from delivering this project?
So I mean, the evolution is not done yet. We haven't delivered. We are working towards the next phase.
Okay.
But I think so far, going from where we've been to where we are today is, I mean, aside from being like revenue is the end all be all, right? Like we are now producing at higher capacity per AE and per SDR than we were a year ago. And this plays as a role of it because we're spending our time in better places and reaping, better results from it. But in general, just having, more structure and more process makes scalability easier thing to do. Like when, we have 10 AEs right now, when we get to 20, 30 AEs, you're not going to be able to manage that machine with a lot of broken manual processes that are, that are not streamlined and easy to go through. So what we've done so far is set up a framework to be able to scale much faster. So that's a big win for us. But where we want to go will essentially unleash our growth, because we're going to be able to capitalize on all the opportunities to help prospects that are looking for that help, and that's just going to result in more dollars.
Very cool. And I think I haven't asked you this on the live recording here, but how did you know it was time to make the shift from what you described as spray and pray over to the account-based targeting methodology? What was the signal to make that shift?
So it was around starting to get an understanding of who our ideal prospect is, and understanding who we don't want to be talking to. Not necessarily who we don't want to talk to, or who's not ready to be evaluating us.
Right, exactly.
So it was really around kind of around the 5, 10, 15 employee companies, where, when you spray and pray, you're going to talk to all ranges, and then through understanding that we're starting to see a delineation, was when, was right around when I also joined, and we were seeing this. And so we put that in place as a way to address kind of the knowledge that we're starting to get from our spray and pray. Like we started to understand who we should be talking to, and the conversations that were had up until that point were the mechanism for us to understand that.
Very cool. And now, as you look back, what are the key takeaways that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of iteration is one really important thing that we within the sales ops team, we always talk about it, and about like you can't just flip the switch overnight and go from 0 to 100, or from not good to great all of a sudden.
Yep.
So taking the steps, taking the baby steps, learning from them, and iterating on them has been a really important component to any evolution that we've gone through, specifically account-based marketing and sales.
Fantastic. And was there anything in addition to that that was significant for you around the change management process?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess like understanding how to make the changes that you want to make, and have the sales team adopt the changes, is a really big component, because it's all around the habits that we have. Personal habits that we have, like biting my nails, is a really difficult thing to do, but you have to force yourself to do, and you have to understand why it's important, why it's great if you are able to change the habit or create a new habit. So creating new habits just takes a lot of effort and focus and time. And so that's similar kind of thread around, we are making pretty big changes, even within baby steps. We're making big changes that we need to roll out to the sales team. So the change management around educating, enabling them to understand why it's important to do something differently, and for them to see how it's going to benefit them, is a very important process to get right, so that you have buy-in, and so that everyone's on the same truck, going the same direction. It's a very big component of making any evolution happen, is getting everyone on board, and breaking bad habits, creating good habits, is a big part of change management.
Fantastic. Michelle, thank you so much for delivering such a great interview today. We've really benefited from your experience. We hope we can have you on here again on the RevAmp podcast show, and I'm sure that the rest of this project will be equally successful as the work that you've already done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bemet, you've been fantastic, and really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Tada. Thank you very much.